Four Small Suitcases by Andrea Kazmarek. Have you ever wondered what things you would pack if you had to leave in a great hurry? For most of us, packing a suitcase for a holiday or for a trip is fun. But once, for these four children, it was the hardest thing to do. Each of these children was told what to put in their small suitcase. The list was simple: underclothes, night clothes, socks, a toothbrush, a comb, a towel, soap, and a warm coat or jacket. That was the easy part. But what about the things they needed most? Memories and hope. They didn't know what would happen to them, where they would go, or what dangers faced them. Sometimes there were bombs, wars, hatred, or other terrible things, reasons that forced them to leave for a safer life. Sometimes children were sent to a new town or even a new country to stay safe. Some of them had a number on a card to hang around their neck, a paper bag with some bread or an apple for the long journey by train or boat. Maybe they waved goodbye at a crowded, smoky railway station with tears in their eyes. Maybe they set out on a long walk or huddled in an underground shelter. They each held on tight to their small suitcase. Helga was 8 years old. "We are sending you somewhere safe. Here in Germany, it is no longer safe for a little Jewish girl, but we will come soon too." On a cold November day in 1938, little Helga Weingarten hugged her mother and packed her small suitcase. Helga was going on a kinder transport to England, a long journey on a train, and later on a big ship to a land she had never even heard of. "Can I take my doll?" Helga packed slowly. Helga had 2 dolls, but only Mimi, the soft blue rag doll, was small and soft enough to be tightly squashed in. Helga held a photo of her mother and father and her grandma. Helga was smaller in the photo, sitting on her mother's lap. She packed it with Mimi and a blue sweater that her mother had knitted. But Helga wanted something special. Helga's mother took off her necklace and kissed it. "It's Grandma's silver chain with a silver Star of David. So this way you'll remember both of us." Helga puzzled about her mother's tears. Didn't she say that she would be coming soon? The train station was packed. So many children with numbers and clutching their own small suitcases. It was noisy and smoky. There were so many people. Helga gazed out of the blurred train window. She thought she saw her mother waving, but it was hard to tell. There were so many mothers waving. So many pale faces and waving hands. "I miss you already. Please, please come soon," Helga whispered to the frosty train window as the train slowly chugged, gathering speed and leaving the station far behind. Sadly, Helga never saw her mother again. She learnt English and went to school in her new country, and later went to live with a kind and caring family, but she always kept her small suitcase and her memories. Jack was 9 years old when one day his mother held him tight and told him, "London is getting far too dangerous. Bombs are falling almost every night." Jack knew this because it was 1940 and there were bombs dropping on London, the city where he lived. His mother and older sister Enid often spent nights huddled together in the underground shelter. He wasn't surprised when his mother quietly told him, "Children can go to the countryside where it is safe. It isn't for long, Jack, just until the bombs stop, then you can come back." Jack nodded. He had heard about this at school. "You will be an evacuee in the countryside." His mother smiled and held his hand so tightly that it hurt. Jack's mother read the list out loud. They both looked down at the tiny suitcase. Underclothes, night clothes, warm clothes, a face flannel, and as many handkerchiefs as we can pack into this little case. Jack's mother held up a box with his gas mask and his number card to hang around his neck, so they will know your name and number at the station. Jack asked if he could take any toys. His mother shook her head. "It's such a small suitcase, but it's not for long," she smiled. Jack had lots of little toy cars, so he said, "I'll take my London black taxi, then I can tell them all about London." His mother hugged him again. "That's a good idea." Jack's mother put in a small paper exercise book and a pencil. "You can write me letters about the countryside." She smiled and hugged him for the millionth time. Even though there wasn't much room in Jack's small suitcase, they squashed in a bag of biscuits too. Later, when Jack unpacked his suitcase, the biscuits were all broken, but he smiled as he nibbled and slipped his black taxi into his pocket. My lucky London charm, I hope. Jack lived on a small farm in Wales. He fed the chickens in the mornings, walked to school with the other children, and soon made friends, even if they made fun of the way he talked. Fields and cows instead of houses and noise. It was a different life for Jack. Cows, pigs and chickens, and even learning to drive a tractor. He never forgot it. Jack went back to London when the war ended. His mother and sister had moved to a new house after a bomb had hit their home. Irma was 10 years old. She lived in Berlin. The terrible war was at last coming to an end. Bombs were falling on the city of Berlin so often now. Irma had her own small suitcase next to her bed. When the screeching sirens roared in the night, Irma's mother yelled. Irma grabbed the suitcase. She stumbled, still sleepy, down the stairs into the cellar under their house. Mostly they slept in their day clothes so that they could get faster to the underground rooms when the bombs started falling. Irma and her mother never knew how long they would stay in that damp cellar. And worse, they never knew what they would find when they climbed back up the next day. Often, neighbours' houses had been bombed. Irma kept the family papers in her small suitcase, the family book. This was a book with all the birth certificates and marriage certificates of Irma's family. Irma knew that it was important to have all these papers if their house got bombed. Then everybody will know who we are, the Gruber family. Irma was proud that all this was in her small suitcase. She also had some clean clothes in the suitcase. Often they spent 2 or 3 days in the cellar. She had candles, some biscuits, and a storybook to read. Those long cold nights need a good story, Irma smiled. She had card games too. The grown-ups liked things like that. Sometimes neighbours couldn't get to their own cellars. People helped each other in those terrible times. That was the only good thing. Irma's house got bombed one terrible night, but it wasn't as badly damaged as so many others. After the war, they managed to build it up again, bit by bit, to fix new windows and doors. But Irma always kept her small suitcase as a memory of those terrible times. She never forgot those nights she spent huddled in a damp, dark cellar. Farid was 8 years old, and he used to live in Aleppo in Syria. Farid didn't have a small suitcase, but he had a small backpack. His family told him that they were going to leave. There was too much shooting and fighting all around. Nothing was safe anymore. "We will walk a long, long way. We will try to get to a faraway country to be safe, away from all the fighting," Farid's father told him and held his hands tightly. Farid too packed his small blue backpack. He rolled up his fresh clothes tight. His mother tried to tell him, "It will be a big adventure, like camping out." But he didn't believe her. Her face was just too sad. Farid knew that they would walk a long, long way, so he packed bandages and plasters for his feet. His father gave him a spray. "There might be insects at night, and we will sleep out in the open." Farid looked at his small backpack. He pushed his favourite sweets into the pockets, ones to suck and last a long while. His favourite toy at home was a bike. How Farid loved to race around on that bike, but it was far too big for his little backpack. He stroked his bike sadly. He cleaned it until it was shiny. Then he asked his father to take a photo of him on his bike. He carefully locked up his bike. He hid it in the garden at the back of their house and put the bicycle lock in his backpack. "For when we come home," Farid smiled sadly. They walked for many, many days. In the end, Farid stopped counting the days. It was not like camping at all. Weeks later, they reached a big camp for refugees. That's what people called them now. Farid and his family could now hope to begin a safer life. but Farid always kept his backpack safe under his pillow for when they go back home. Farid went to school in his new country and learnt a new language. That was hardest at first, not understanding so many new words. His family talk about their old life and their old home all the time. One day we will go back, his father always says. Farid is doing very well at school now. He's a good pupil. One day he even got a new, well, almost new bike. Farid smiled. It's a good bike. Maybe it's even better than my old one, but it's not the same. Maybe another child has found my old bike. I hope so. The end. Thank you for reading with Storyberries.com. Free stories for kids.